Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party Network, the only podcast that take you through the entire back catalogue of A24, review the latest releases, and bring you interviews with the people behind the movies. On today's show, we review what has been regarded as one of the best films of the year since its debut all the way back at Sundance. It's Celine Song's Past Lives. I'm your co-host Alice King, and with me as always is the co-host with whom I must share several layers of Inyon by now. It's Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks for finally returning back to Scotland after all your gallivanting and hobnobbing with the stars and so on. Yeah, nice to have you back with me.
Yes, it was very, very gracious of me to leave before I got to run into Jessica Chastain again. It was poor planning on my part, and but we are lucky to be joined by a former guest on the show and filmmaker and fellow Baltimore Ravens fan. It is Billie Melissa Rogan. How are you?
You had to get that in there, love that.
I had to get that
I'm
in there.
good. I am good. How are you guys?
Holding up, holding back the tears, which will inevitably flow as we discuss this film, I'm sure. But before we dive into the review, of course, it's time for some A24-hour news, and festival season is upon us, and A24 has had strong showings at the Venice and Toronto film festivals. Venice had screenings of Harmony Korine's Aggro Drift in the Saturday night midnight slot that was filled last year by Pearl, and Sofia Coppola's Priscilla, which won a Volpe Cup for Best Actress Performance by Cally Spenny. And in Toronto, they had screenings of Jonathan Glaze's Zone of Interest, Dix the Musical, and Dream Scenario starring Nicolas Cage. Now, I can only attest to the quality of Priscilla, which I saw at Venice, but possibly the more interesting aspect of these premieres is that they are some of the very few films at these festivals to actually feature actors attending to promote them, because this is a time when much of the Hollywood machine has ground to a halt due to the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes. The reason the likes of Cally Spenny, Jacob Elordi, and Nicolas Cage have been able to promote their films at these is because is down to the SAG-AFTRA interim agreement, which is something that A24 and a couple of smaller studios have agreed to the terms of SAG-AFTRA in terms of pay, fair deals, AI restrictions, and streaming revenue. Now, I'll get your thoughts on this both, but Billie, as a filmmaker, you quite nobly took a stand, which meant that you were unable to join me in Venice because you wanted to support the strikes. What do you make of the current situation and the fact that smaller companies like A24 have been able to agree to something which the largest studios are so far unwilling to come to the table for?
I mean, I think that, like, first of all, it's just, like, terrifying as, like, a young filmmaker in the sense of, like, having only made a few films so far. Like, it's not the best industry to be, like, walking into at this very moment in time. But I think Jessica Chastain actually made a really great statement about it at Venice. I watched it this morning, where she was saying about how, you know, it just goes to show you that these things are very attainable if people like A24 and Neon can achieve it. And, you know, the biggest, most wealthy people in Hollywood refuse to, you know, it's all about greed and taking out the artists behind the art. I think Damien Chazelle said something really nice as well, right, at Venice about, like, art over content, and just a very bleak scenario. But I'm hoping that, I don't know, I think the people who are making the best art are still getting to make it. So maybe that's a controversial statement.
I mean, do you think it could cause a shift where, people might realize we don't need the studios anymore, if people like, and we see, more films being produced by smaller studios? Because, I mean, there was speculation last week that, someone who could have potentially changed the landscape was Miss Taylor Swift herself, who cut out the studios, went direct to the cinemas herself, and is now looking at a Marvel level $100 million plus opening weekend, proving that, what do we need the studios for after all, actually? I mean, Lee, what do you make of it all?
I've been a bit torn. It's kind of my rightly or wrongly natural kind of view sometimes to see some of these actors there during a strike, and regardless of kind of this person's got an exemption, this person doesn't, to kind of think scab at first is my initial reaction, which makes it kind of difficult. And yeah, I find it slightly messy and so on, because I think for the general public, that's what they probably see when they see that. They don't realize the sort of the intricacies behind it all. But I think kind of in addition to Jessica Chastain, I think Adam Driver made a really good point when he was talking about Ferrari, of like, how can Neon, and was it ATX or something like that, kind of make these agreements and, you know, get people on, and they are not the Netflixes, the Disneys, etc., that seem to be waging a war against these actors and so on. And I just find the whole situation is just really quite messy and so on. And yeah, I'm glad some people have maybe traveled and have made their statement, but yeah, I do worry a little bit about kind of the imagery of it all and what people might be thinking and so on, and especially the fact that there doesn't seem to be any sign of breaking on the horizon, which is really frustrating from the studios.
Yeah, it's looking like it's a situation which is just going to drag on and on as the likes of Bob Iger and the Zaslav dig their heels in and refuse to come to the table. But thankfully, we are here today to talk about a film which already has been released and has done very well, and in a, I guess, ever decreasing potential lineup for Best Picture at the Oscars, stands a pretty good chance, perhaps. Well, or maybe not. I don't know. In my opinion, it might. But I guess we're going to find out what you think as well. So, Past Lives is the debut feature written and directed by Celine Song, and in it sees Nora and Hae Sung, two deeply connected childhood friends who are wrested apart when Nora's family emigrates from South Korea. 20 years later, they are reunited over one fateful week in New York as they confront notions of love and destiny. The film stars Greta Lee, Teo Yoo, and John McGarrow. So, Billy, I'm going to come to you first, because I believe you saw before. No, you don't want to go first. Okay, Lee, we'll come to you.
No, I'm fine.
No, you're fine. Okay, yeah. So it's just basically first thoughts. What were your expectations going in, and did it live up to? Because I think you saw, I think at the same time as me, it's Sundance London, which was around about sort of 6 months after everyone had already declared it the best film of the year. So did it manage to live up to the hype?
Yes, yeah. I'd actually already heard really great things about it, because I had a friend who had been at a test screening, and she had been like, she couldn't talk about it, obviously she signed an NDA, but she had been saying to me that there's this A24 film and I can't talk about it, but it's the best thing I've seen in a really long time, and it's, and she was just waiting for news. I think she'd seen it in like May the year before, and she couldn't tell me anything, and I was like, I need to know what it is. And then finally when it came out at Sundance, she told me that was what it was, and I had already been like having all this anticipation towards it because of the subject matter. I think is one that you think would be very common in film, but actually isn't. I think the complexities of romance and just intimacy in general are often like very difficult to capture. So I was excited definitely to see it, but I don't know, it's always hard because it is such a personal film for her as well. You don't know if those like specificities are going to be alienating, but they are so universal. I thought it was great.
Yep. And Lee, you were the last one to see it. You actually had to, I think you saw a press screening at Edinburgh all the way in August. I mean, did you manage to go in as blind as possible still, or and what did you think?
I did. I went to see a 9:30 in the morning press screening of this film, which was absolutely fantastic to get something like that again. And yeah, it's been a film that I've waited for quite a while to see. I've avoided all the reviews. I've seen like obviously the tweets praising it, but yeah, there was a lot that surprised me, and I only actually saw the trailer for the first time relatively recently actually, and I must admit I was quite surprised watching the trailer that I don't think it's a particularly good trailer, truth be told, and so on. I think it kind of plays the hand of the third act a lot more, where where I went in thinking, oh, it's this story about two young kids that used to be close, and sort of they maybe look to kind of find each other again, sort of in later life, and there might be a romantic interest, but she's married, and that's kind of all I knew. Whereas the trailer kind of plays up sort of the elements between sort of the three parts a little bit. It has a bit of a soundtrack choice that's maybe a little bit naff and a bit cheesy, and I was just like, oh, that's kind of not this subtle film that I watched. So I'm glad I got to see it without any of the trailers. And I mean, I didn't even realize John Magario was even going to be into the film. And when he pops up like an hour into the film, I was like, this is a wonderful treat. I am very happy today. So yeah, it was nice to go in surprised as possible. And I'm hoping that's going to be the same with a lot more of their films on the horizon.
Yeah, and I'm just going to apologise in advance if I happen to call John McGarrow's character Charlie, which I keep doing, even though his character's name in this is Arthur. Charlie was his character's name in The Big Short, and for some reason I keep calling him Charlie when I shouldn't. So there we go. um, so yeah, no, I saw this at Sundance London as well, and I didn't get Billy's opinion because she was running off to Greta Gerwig screening, but I believe she was running out in floods of tears.
So very
Whereas
on
I
brand
was,
of me.
whereas I was struggling to keep together because there were certain points which I'm sure we'll touch on that hit home quite hard. And for me, I feel that it's a film which is obviously steering you in one direction, but I think everyone's going to have a slightly different opinion on it depending on what they bring to the film in terms of experiences they've had with their own relationships and stuff. And perhaps you might sympathize with certain characters more than others and stuff like that. But for me, what I've took away from it, I actually haven't written a review of it because I've been struggling to sort of get my thoughts together in a coherent way, which is why a rambling podcast is much easier for this kind of thing. But for me, it was a film which struck me as an example of how love and cinema can both sort of transcend boundaries, in that time, distance, and language don't really matter when you have a story which connects with you, or a love which connect with someone, and this sort of has that all there. I mean, what I knew the central sort of story was these two friends would sort of reconnect, but I didn't expect the bit in the middle where they sort of connect before this sort of meeting in New York, where they have this sort of getting to know you montage over sort of it's not even Zoom because it's set probably in sort of mid 2000s, so it's probably just Apple call, iPhone
It's
call, whatever.
Skype.
Is it
Yeah,
Skype?
Skype.
Of course, yes, it's
How
Skype.
did you not remember that lovely ringing tone?
Of course, the ringtone. Yes, no, that's true. Yes, it is. It is just Skype. So yes. So I wasn't expecting that. But I mean, the film itself starts with a shot of this sort of essential love triangle at a bar, and we've got this unseen group of people debating the nature of their relationship before sort of Nora sort of breaks the fourth wall. So it's quite a bold opening. I mean, what did you guys make of that decision before it then sort of cuts back to these two friends at the very early age?
It's kind of believable, isn't it? Like, I find myself like it's one of those ones like whether I would still be kind of hung up on someone that was a bit of a high school crush, etc. But like that's kind of what we all did really at that time. I mean, I think these characters, like I'm like 36, like I kind of was of that sort of generation of sort of kind of MySpace and Facebook in the kind of the early days, and like your kind of social circle were people that you grew up with, people you went to school with, and then it would be sort of like I guess the people you knew when you were at uni, and when you lived in a new city or something like that. So it was quite easy in those early days to go, oh, remember that person, oh, remember that girl I had a huge crush on, or remember my first primary school girl that I kissed behind the back of the shed. You would look up those people online and so on. And I mean, I'm pretty sure like, most of my Facebook is still made up of those people I added on those early days. Like it was totally believable that people would have been looking up those people. Would I be doing that now in my mid-30s? Absolutely not. But I would have done that in my early 20s and my late teens, early 20s. Well, I think, yeah, late teens were the kind of when they were looking to do it for the first time, etc. So totally believable. I mean, I was certainly guilty of it.
And of course, I guess it's almost quite commonplace nowadays for relationships to start over Zoom or whatever with the pandemic and stuff like that, and also apps and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it makes total sense. So Billy, what did you make of the fourth wall break at the beginning and this sort of deliberate sort of ambiguity, I guess, over the nature of the three people and the predicament that they're in?
I think it was very like interesting because I was like, I don't know what I was expecting walking into the film, but it definitely wasn't that. And like that definitely kind of broke down my expectations and very much had me open to whatever I was going to experience next. I think it's really interesting because it's not just about like it. I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say, but in the sense that like a lot of our relationships exist in private, and you know, it's really interesting to see what people make of those looking in. And I don't know, I just love the idea that like these people are speculating about them, and then we get to know the truth, but these people never will know the truth. Like, and we kind of share a secret with Nora and Hae Sung and Arthur. And I don't know, I think it's a really like beautiful way to open, and really bold way to open your first film, let alone like any of your filmography. But like, yeah, as a first time filmmaker, I thought it was a great choice.
Yeah, and you know, something that I certainly was looking out for in my, I've sort of seen it twice now. On the second one was her use of blocking and how, and so which and on what sides the characters were and stuff like that. I was looking to see if there was any correlation between, you know, the positioning of Arthur and Nora, and then Nora and Hae Sung and stuff like that, or when the three of them are together. Because initially, I think it's like in that first shot, you've got Hae Sung on the left, Nora in the middle, and Arthur on the right. And then it's like, you know, what sort of combinations are there? Just see if there's like common themes about maybe sort of indicating as to what side Nora was perhaps leaning to and stuff like that. So I thought it was really interesting to sort of look at that. And then, of course, we revisit this scene later on without the commentary of the guests and stuff like that. But you've got that slow track in, which then really sort of cruelly cuts Arthur out of the frame as we intensify on the conversation between the two, and then it actually switches round. So, and we actually see Hae Sung and Nora on the other side, where it's almost like I think like when during the sort of first meets and stuff like that, you know, he's in this new country and he's not really sure what's going on. He's not sure how to handle things, and Nora's on the right hand side. And then when towards the end and they have this conversation, it switches around, and then Hae Sung's on the right, and he's almost the one sort of taking charge of the situation. Um, which then sort of, but then it sort of resolved with this sort of so many sort of killer lines of dialogue which just sort of pierce you right to the heart. Just like the, you know, you're somebody who leaves and stuff like that. I never knew it would be as difficult, you know, liking your husband and stuff like that. As a filmmaker, you know, what did you make of Celine Song's blocking and composition?
I mean, I loved it. And also I think that like she embraced her um like roots in playwriting. It felt not theatrical, because I think that would be diminishing like what she achieved, but like it felt intentional, which I think sometimes when there's so much to think about, especially when it's your first film, it can just like be an afterthought. But I agree with you in the sense that like it was interesting to see their positioning from the bar to like the when they're walking to the bar, and like Arthur's in the middle, and they're kind of just walking ahead of him and having this conversation, and then she like stops and is like, "Oh, we've never done that together," to Arthur. There are some really great moments in there, and I've seen it 4 times now. Completely accidentally, I've seen it 4 times. Put
Were you going into a Barbie screening and just got the wrong film?
Yeah, we'll go with that. No, very, very unintentionally have seen it 4 times. Not because it's not a great film, just, you know, having to go through it once is enough. But 4 times is honestly.
You just can't.
If anyone else
says, "Hey, do you want to go to see Past Lives?" You're like, "Yes, okay, I'll do."
I'm like, well,
I'll ruin myself again. It's fine.
I'm like, well, I've told my husband. My husband's not seen it yet. I'm like, you have to go alone. I'm sorry, I can't go with you. You're gonna have to go and experience that by yourself. But anyway, that was a tangent. Yeah, blocking.
My partner had to do the same, so I went to see it, and I already had a press ticket for it. So I was like, "There you go, you go see it." So I think we wanted to go see it originally together, but we both had to experience it separately. So you're not the only one that sent someone on a mission to see it alone.
Good.
I'm just wondering if it's the type of film similar to something like Marriage Story or whatever, which if you went as a couple, it might, I don't know, there might be some uncomfortable conversations afterwards. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have the conversations though. Like, I think that it inspires very like open relationships. I think Arthur is an amazing character throughout. Very like, I think it's a very realistic response to what's going on, as opposed to like the natural thing to go to is like this dramatic, like I can't believe it, and he does kind of like go there of being like, oh, you're gonna run away with him, and has a joke about it. But I don't know, I really like the use of him throughout.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, Arthur is a very interesting character, like you say. I mean, he does sort of. It's sort of mentioned in the trailer and stuff. He's just sort of tackle it sort of head on, and in a you know a slightly more cliched Hollywood type movie that he would be the evil white husband who is standing in the way of true love and these two friends getting back together and stuff like that. But it's credit to the writing of the character and McGarrett's performance that he is not that type of person. He's just a genuinely nice guy who is like, well, he's come all this way. I'm not going to stop you from seeing him, even though he knows what it could mean for himself. And I know, I mean, he talks about, you dream in a language I can't understand, and he's like trying to learn Korean so he can understand her better. But for me, the line that killed me was that you make my life bigger, and I worry if I do the same for you, because it sort of discussed that, essentially, while they were dating stuff, they got married, so she could get a green card and stuff like that. So slight marriage of convenience, but he's clearly head over heels in love with her, and is clearly worrying that, she doesn't feel the same way. And yeah, it really made me feel for Arthur to the point where it's like, I'm not sure I really want these two potentially to get together because I like Arthur so much. And it's because, I mean, but that was my opinion. Some other people might think, no, I mean, the connection between these two is too strong and they definitely deserve to end up together. So,
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
think that's a part of like not to kind of past lives everything, but like people do have past lives, and I think that's part of like I guess especially when you're in your like 30s and beyond is recognizing people have their past lives. Like when you meet women, men, people that you're meeting on dating apps, etc. They haven't kind of come out from nowhere. Like people have got their own traumas, like they've loved, they've lost. People are very complex kind of beings and so on, and people have friendships with people that they've been close with, etc. And I think it can be odd or slightly awkward at times, but I think you often have to I hope provide that sort of safe space and be comfortable sometimes with being uncomfortable. That's a better place to be than perhaps bitter or jealous or about these sorts of things, but putting your faith and trust in someone that this is my person, this is someone I'm in love with, and I accept them for all that they've ever kind of gone through, and allowing that space and so on, and kind of trying to meet it best you can. And that was certainly what I certainly saw in the character anyway.
yeah, so I think it's something that sort of. I was having a conversation with someone about this film, and I guess maybe it sort of depends on the type of person you are. If you're, I guess, risk averse, if you want to play it safe, or if you're someone like Nora who, like you say, someone who leaves, who was always dreaming of more and stuff like that, or what could be. And I guess yeah, maybe it all comes down to what type of person you are. But so I mean, Arthur, great guy, solid guy, thumbs up. I mean, Billy, what did you make of the relationship between Nora and Hae Sung as it developed across the film? And I guess the performances of Greta and Theo as well.
That's the therapy question, Dallas. That's not a podcast question. I need a therapist to answer that. No, I think it's. I mean, I think that it's just very, very interesting. And kind of like I said at the beginning of the podcast, of like, it's so rare to get an authentic depiction, especially spanning like 24 years worth of history. It's so difficult to capture people changing over time, but like those, going from like preteen to early 20s to like comfortable adulthood was like the best way to go about it. And there's a line that I love when they're sitting at the Brooklyn carousel, and they'd like say, oh, we were babies then, and then we were babies again when we met when we were 20, but we're not babies anymore in their 30s. And I think that that kind of like really captures their whole relationship, in the sense that it's like at some point you stop giving into these childlike dreams of what love and romance should be, and kind of become comfortable with what it is. And I think that it was so important to span those decades. It wouldn't be enough if they had just met when they were like 20 and had a thing and it didn't work out. It was like it had to be all the way from childhood. It had to be rooted in, I miss the way you made me feel when I was that young, both times, 12 or 24. And Dallas, you've given me a really hard question. I could go on for 20 minutes. I'm going to stop and let someone else say something. But I thought it was, honestly, just the most authentic depiction of that relationship that I've ever seen on screen. Very healing to see.
So, I mean, Lee, what did you make of their relationship? Obviously, they meet several times, across their lives, where something could have happened and then they stop, and then, something else could happen. Now, I'm going to throw it to, the elephant in the room. People keep referring it to the Before trilogy. So, what did you make of their central relationship, and how does it compare to one of your favorite film trilogies of all time?
Maybe there's a little bit of Before Sunset in that to an extent, but feels like there's so much more to it than that. Like, it is very much its own thing. And for me, watching that relationship, I was like, I go back to it like I'm essentially the same age as these characters. Like, I'm very sure, like, based on sort of the ages of the kind of the timelines of them all, and even some of the age of the characters, these are people that are in their mid-30s, late 30s, etc. And the internet changed things, really, didn't it? And people that you had a connection with, etc., you were able to kind of maintain that and so on, probably for just that sort of that boomer generation beyond sort of us millennials. Like, there was always that talk of loved and lost and so on, and that high school sweetheart you never saw again. You maybe just had to wonder about it. And then for our generation, we've perhaps never been able to guess shake our childhood friends or exes or people we went on a couple of dates with and remained friends with on Instagram and so on. Like, you kind of are always a few clicks away from these people, and if you have questions or worries, etc., you probably can reach out to these people, and it feels like you can always light a spark again and so on. And I think they were obviously that first generation that had that exposure to that, and the one that got away always felt that little bit closer to an extent, and you could probably explore that in a safe and healthy way of, like, as you say, chatting over Skype, recommending music, emailing each other, and so on. And it's harder to cut, for better or worse, I think, which makes it an interesting discussion at times. And I find that quite fascinating to explore. I don't know if it's been such a good thing for our generation that we're always still connected to some of these people and so on. And I remembered, like, kind of, I think it was about last year, like, there was a woman I had gone on a few dates with and so on, and it was clearly we weren't quite right for each other at that time. I remember when she got engaged, I was like, oh, this is provoking some odd feelings in me of, like, was she the one that got away, and how do I feel about this and so on, whereas probably in another past life never would have seen that person again and never sort of explored those kind of thoughts or feelings. So it throws a lot up at you, where you think about yourself, your own experiences, and you can certainly see yourself reflected in these characters and so on. And you can probably understand why people maybe feel compelled to cheat as well. Obviously that doesn't happen in this film, but it's easier than ever for a lot of people. So yeah, lots of answers there to one question, I think.
Wait, I'd really love to add to that about like the use of technology. I just think it's so amazing. Like I feel like so many filmmakers are so scared to really embrace the fact that this generation is so very digital, and the fact that she like brought that in and made it so cinematic and so like captured so much yearning through screens was just, I feel like people have to study that, you know, to figure out how to be able to replicate that, because it, I don't know, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I feel like there's always this, people don't even like put phones in films really, like they're too scared to like show people like texting or having a phone call, but like so much of our intimate lives exists on like our devices. And I just think that that's like, I don't know, that was one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, she gets it, because people feel so confident saying so much online that they just can't say in person, and then when you see them like go from being online to in person trying to have these conversations that they had, there's like, I don't know, I could write a whole essay on just like how brilliant that use
So
of
true,
Skype
because
was.
like you see it like when you're watching those kind of conversations, and sort of like Hae Sung is quite, you know, he comes across quite confident in how he emails or speaks something, and then when you kind of put them together in that kind of park and they meet each other the first time, he's a bit kind of stiff, a bit stilted. He's no Casanova or anything like that. He really needs to warm up. And you know, you hear it for so many people with like modern dating, that people are so reliant on behind screens and texting, etc., that it's sometimes really hard to translate that over into real life. And that's where so many of these kind of relationships come undone and so on. It's not necessarily sometimes a language barrier, but like a technology barrier that's basically taken away
Mm-hmm.
a generation's skill, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this generation these days with the Tinder and all that, where yeah, you're texting back and forth for days, whatever, and then when you meet up in person, it's something like that. They'll never know the fear of having to go up to someone in a bar and ask them if they want a drink or a dance or something like that. It just doesn't happen. If you did that these days, you'd probably get looked at like a complete weirdo, you know. But I mean, one of the other things I liked about it is the fact that they have actually complete conversations. You know, it's not like, you know, these things where, you know, people just hang up a phone without saying goodbye or whatever because it's the movies and they have to move on with the plot and stuff like that. Or the worst thing, which is people texting someone who's in their phone, yet it shows no previous text history. It's like the first text they've ever
Yes.
sent them. And it's just like, surely, you know, you could have like, you know, put in a few messages before that just to make it look like, you know, they have actually spoken to each other before. So yeah, no, there's that. But it's interesting you sort of talk about sort of, you know, potentially sort of, you know, this unable to sort of cut the cord and stuff like that. Because now I'm going to come to the ending, you know, so spoilers if you've not seen Past Lives. Why haven't you? It's out now. But yeah, no, go and see it and come back. So it's really to sort of get your opinions on the ending, your reading of it, and if everyone made the right decisions. So at the end of it, you know, they've gone out for drinks and whatever. They come back. Hasten's got an Uber to go to the airport. Noah decides to walk him to the car. So they have this sort of chat. They're sort of not really sure what to say. He puts his camera, he turns around, and what I thought he was going to say doesn't happen. I thought that the reason that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was in there earlier was going to come back and have a reference. I thought he was going to say to her, "Meet me in Montauk," as a really romantic gesture, just to say that, you know, we might have something in the future if you meet me in Montauk. You know, it's a symbolic thing. But no, he just basically says, you know, he talks about the past lives and the, you know, this thing about Inyon, where it's layers upon layers of past lives to get you to the point where you are finally with someone, and maybe this is just a past life on the way to them being together in the future. And it just sort of, everyone sort of in the audience is sort of bawling their eyes out at this point, and that's what happens to Nora. She sort of breaks down walking back. Charlie's there on the steps outside, gives her a hug, takes her back indoors. For me, he's possibly going, it's clear that she has feelings for this person, but I'm going to support her through working through this and hope that, you know, she stays with me in the end. For me, I think it is both of them realizing that this is the end of whatever they did have. And yeah, they'll have to wait for a future life to be together. And it's just not going to work out for them this time. But I'd be interested to get what your thoughts on what the future holds for all three, and if they all made the right decision, I guess. So Lee, we'll come to you first. Give Billy time to compose herself for an answer.
Thank you, Dallas.
It was the right decision, and I think that will hurt and take everyone time to deal with and so on. And I go back to that thing of like, you can't. It's easier than ever for our generation and that to reconnect with people and missed opportunities and so on. And it's probably so easy to think, oh, that was the person for me. Oh, I wish I could go back 5 years and do that, or 10 years, etc. And I've seen people that have been hung up on the past and so on. And you can romanticize it so well. Not to compare it to sort of the most base level thing, but I was thinking recently of programs like The Ultimatum and Love is Blind, for example, where people meet people and they sort of romanticize them. They're perfect. We've only spent 2 days together, or we've just had these idyllic conversations in these pods or romantic settings. And it never has that. Life is messy, it's difficult, people are full of contradictions. Like, their marriage, I'm sure, is really good, but then they might even have doubts of, oh, did she just marry me for a visa? Oh, I'm maybe not this person. But they do make each other happy. Like, Arthur creates a safe space for Nora to explore these things. Like, they kind of clearly work really well together, but people can romanticize all of these things. And I think the mistake sometimes is when people maybe give in to those kind of feelings or confusion and so on over like thinking that's the ideal option and so on. And I think the hurt that they feel at the end is perfectly just real. And we've all been there, where with people we've lost or relationships have failed, and we take the blame for it, or we think if only this and this was different. But the reality is those things kind of happen for a reason, and life does move on. And yeah, I think that's tough to watch and accept sometimes, but that's life and reality. And I feel that Nora and Arthur are a really good pair together, and there'll be some damage, but they'll get through that. They are real life, they are people, they have their flaws and all, and I think they both accept and understand that. And I think Hae Sung, for example, has a lot to deal with in terms of perhaps maybe traditional views that have held him back. Still lives at home with like family, all these elements, and he's at a different part of his life and so on. And Nora is, and I couldn't see them together working particularly well, or how that all works. It would just be too messy and so on. So yeah, I think the right decision was made, and my heart went to all of them really in that moment. It's hard to do the right thing sometimes.
Yeah, but cynically, Arthur and Nora, they're both writers. I'm sure they'll do well and get a couple of books and plays out of it. Although I'm still really keen to know what Arthur's book Boner was about. Yeah, I still need to find out what the synopsis for that was. So, Billy, was it the right decision on everyone's part?
Just to go back to Boner real quick. My friend Amon hosted a Q&A of it. That's one of the reasons I was roped into seeing it again. And he actually asked her about that. He was like, where do we get the copy of, but like, come on, like, how are we getting it? And she was like, I just wanted it to be a book that I would want to read. So,
So
maybe we'll get like a little A24 like merch moment. Yeah, I don't know, like maybe. But anyway, going on to the real question. I think it's like there's no definitive answer to like, yes, they made the right choice, no, they made the wrong choice. I think like it's really about choosing a life and not like a person. It's about like, what was she going to do then? Like go to Seoul and live with him, or like he was going to move to New York, and then what? Like their lives just didn't intersect in the way that they were supposed to. And I think that there's a choice that like people who are married make of like, we both envision our lives one way, but we come together to make it look this way. And I think that Arthur and Nora's lives just complement each other more. And I think also you know, as a writer, I guess for Nora, or, you know, just maybe I'm projecting, that as a writer, you're drawn to the romanticism of it all, or just the romantic in general. And I think that there's something very unromantic about spending a life with someone, as much as it's very romantic. But like when you get into the reality of it, it's like, okay, and now we have to figure out how we're going to pay the electricity bill. And it's like, that's not like the magic that's between Hae Sung and Nora, you know, and like having to actually build a life with someone instead of just like dreaming a life for two very different things. And that's not to say that they wouldn't have, like, I don't know, I'm not Nora, she says, for therapy. But like, yeah, I don't know, I think it's really, really difficult to say like one way or the other, like, yes, they made the right choice. It's just, I don't know, it's too hard. I think if she had chosen to not have Nora cry into Arthur at the end, then I would have been like, hey son, come back, she needs to cry, you know. But like, you know, she finally had kind of given herself permission. Or that was the line that I actually really loved as well, where it's like, you can't cry in New York City. I think, I don't know, Dallas, if you clocked it, but I laughed at that the first time I was like, oh boy, I understand that. You know. And she goes on to say, you know, no one cared. And well, that was when she was younger and living in Toronto. But, you know, people don't, everyone's crying in New York City. I cried on the corner of like 54th and 8th, and everyone just walked past me. No one cared that I was crying, you know. So
Lady Bird cried outside that church and people carried on.
Do you know that church was 1 block from my college? So I've cried there too. Yeah, no one cares in New York. So I think, yeah, if she hadn't gone and cried to Arthur, I would have been like, wait, she needs her catharsis, come back. But, you know, she got her tears and she got to give her vulnerability over to someone else. So that's a long-winded way of saying, I don't know, ask someone else.
I think that's the beauty of the film, is that everyone who sees it will have a different opinion on whether they're a romanticist or a realist, a cynic or whatever, or, you know, if they've had their heart broken, someone, you know, their partner left them for someone else, or everything like that will shape your opinion of what the right answer is. And so I think that's what the beauty of the film is, that yeah, it's going to be so many things to so many people, and yet it's completely and 100% authentic and honest to the characters, and I think it's the right decision for all three of them in the end. But of course, everyone will have a different opinion. I mean, so, you know, I think we're all in agreement that it was a fantastic film, one of the best films of the year. Where do we see Past Lives returning around awards season? Are A24 potentially going to get 2 Best Picture winners in a row?
It'll certainly get nominated. I think it'll get nominated in the 10. I don't think it'll win though. But I don't know what's going to win at this stage. But you've all had the joy of getting all this film festival action before me. But yeah, I think it's going to be in the mix. But I don't think it's going to win.
I think it will. I think it's difficult because Barbie's going to run in the original screenplay category. So I don't know.
Oh yes, that's true, isn't it? They're not. So Barbie's not an original, not an existing property or character. Is it? Yeah.
I think that would have crushed the. I think, I don't know. It's hard to know which way they're going to swing, whether they'll go Past Lives or Barbie.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, no, because I think because Past Lives it definitely will be nominated for Best Original Screenplay. I think the screenplay was just wonderful, and I think I think it's going to be the same. But Greta Lee has been touted for Best Actress, and I think it's obviously a heavily stacked category in Best Supporting Actor already, with the likes of Robert Downey Jr. and Ryan Gosling, and I think apparently Robert De Niro for Killers of the Flower Moon. But I think John McGarrow is probably an outside bet, but I think what he does in making that character as likable and making the love triangle as awkward as possible for the audience to know who to root for, I think he does fantastic work in this, and it would be a well-deserved nomination as well.
I think that there's so many places it could go. I would love to see her in the director category. I'd love an all-female director category this year. If you're listening, Academy Awards, That is what I would like to see, please.
Scorsese, Nolan, they've had their nominations before. It's fine. They can wait another. Marty's already got one. They say Nolan's overdue, but yeah, no, he'll be back again with another movie. Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, I think it's Nolan's year this year for that category. I think it's
Well,
probably
you
already
don't get
allocated.
a vote, Lee.
No,
so
unfortunately, I don't know.
No,
that's that on that.
Yeah, so that was emphatically shot there. Why are you even talking about this? Like, you don't vote in the Academy Awards or the BAFTA.
Greta Gerwig should be winning, and we shouldn't be having conversations about anybody else. Okay, that's my 2 cents on the awards chatter this year.
A24. Sorry to tell you, it's not going to be your year. It's the year of Barbie, which
As much as I would love for it to be the year of Past Lives, I would love it to be both of them. Why not? Why don't we do it that way? Past Lives and Barbie.
So, what, Greta Gerwig for director, Celine Song for best original screenplay? Would you be happy with that? Or the other way around? Or best picture? Okay. But as long as Greta walks away with at least one.
Yes, and she would win. She would win for. I guess I don't know if she would win for best picture because she and Noah were producers on the film, but I don't know if it's like a PGA thing or I don't know. Someone more educated can tell me the answer to that.
We seem to be getting slightly sidetracked into another podcast about another movie. But we are all Barbie girls living in a Barbie world, with occasional A24 films on the side as well. But I mean, that sort of brings us to the end. So Billie, in terms of the future for Celine Song, is it bright? Are you excited to see what she does next?
I am. I'm intrigued. Would love to know, and if anyone's got like a interview they can direct me to, I'd love to know why she chose this story to be in the medium of film as opposed to theatre. That's the question that's on my mind. That's irrelevant to the question you asked me, but I'm hoping that someone has some kind of information they can give me on that. But all of that to say, yeah, I'm thrilled if she's going to continue to tell emotional stories that no one else is telling in a way that makes everybody feel seen. Then I'm all for it. More women telling stories. And also, I will say, I really love to see women be allowed to tell romantic stories and not have it be cheapened. I feel like there's this real like movement in the industry now to be like, stop telling stories about women having feelings for men. And it's like, but sometimes we do and we can't help it. So like, yeah, no, it was really nice to see that was it. And also it's getting the praise and respect that it deserves in the same way that like before the Before trilogy does, not to compare them too much because I don't think they're too similar, but I don't know. I think women getting to tell stories of complex romance would love to see more of in general, whether that's Celine Song or anybody.
And hopefully, I was going to say I'm the same. I want to see, I go back to these sorts of things where like in decades gone by, obviously the representation would be severely lacking behind the camera, but every week there would be a drama like this that would be dropping into cinemas and so on, and you would have a range of options to go see a Past Lives, and it's so hard. It's harder and harder to get that. Films like this come along and stand out, and I want films like this to be regular again and so on, with people getting the chance to make the films that they want to make and so on, and not just have them be the kind of option instead of going along to see the big blockbuster that's out that week and so on. I want to see more Past Lives. I want to see these types of talent involved more and more and so on. And I just feel like I miss that kind of what cinemas used to be in the 70s, 80s and 90s for options like this. It'll be a while before we get the next Past Lives, and that shouldn't be the norm at all.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, I think we should probably leave it on that note then, shouldn't we? Amen. So thank you for joining us for this episode of the A24 Project. We'll be back soon with a review of Medusa Deluxe. But in the meantime, take care and we'll see you all soon.